This podcast is brought to you by Proton Dealership IT, experts in dealership cybersecurity and IT management. Interested in a free cybersecurity, compliance, or IT consultation? Visit protontex.com. That's PROTONTECHS.com.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Monday, July 28th, 2025. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, the US and the EU reach a trade deal, but details are scant. Tesla signs a big chip deal with Samsung, and new car satisfaction rises for the first time in 6 years. Plus, we'll hear from Kurt Kelty, Vice President of Battery, Propulsion, and Sustainability at General Motors.
Long run, we all know where we're going. The future is an EV future.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. The US and the European Union have agreed on a deal that will see the EU face 15% tariffs on most of its exports, including vehicles. The agreement staves off a trade war that could have been a blow to the global economy. The deal comes less than a week before the August 1st deadline for President Donald Trump's higher tariffs to take effect. Many details are still not public, including how the agreement will be structured. Tesla CEO Elon Musk says the company has signed a $16.5 billion deal to source chips from Samsung Electronics. Musk said Samsung's new chip factory in Taylor, Texas, will make Tesla's next generation AI-6 chip. While Musk didn't provide a timeline for AI-6 chip production, he previously said that next-generation AI-5 chips will be produced at the end of 2026, suggesting AI-6 would follow. And new vehicle owner satisfaction is high across brands in both premium and mass market segments this year. That's according to J.D. Power's 2025 U.S. Automotive Performance, Execution, and Layout Study. Satisfaction was up in all categories of owner satisfaction for the first time since 2019. The categories with the biggest gains were led by fuel economy, followed by infotainment and interior rankings. And those are today's headlines. Now joining us from Italy, Luca Ciafferi is here to talk about the new trade deal with the European Union. Luca, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thank you. Well, last night was reached a preliminary agreement, a framework, so we don't have the details yet. And very often here the evil is in the details. So what is crystal clear right now is that European auto imports will be taxed with a 15% tariff. And then come the glass. The glass is half full if you fear that before, with no deal, the duty was jumping to 30% from August 1st, that is this Friday, or was remaining 27.5% that's been imposed since the last Trump administration. So going between brackets down to 15% is a good result. But at the same time, before this administration took place, the duty for ages has been 2.5%. So this 15% is 6 times the duty that we had before.
So, Luca, that sounds like those are some of the most important aspects of the deal that we do know now. But how are European automakers reacting?
The reaction of the automakers and of the countries is basically based on how many units they ship to the US. So Germany and Sweden are pretty happy with the deal because Mercedes, Volkswagen, and BMW ship a number of cars to the US, as well Volvo from Sweden. At the same time, a country like France, that has a strong industry but doesn't export cars to the US right now, is not happy at all because this round of deal didn't include alcohol and spirits, so wine and cognac could face a 30% duty of 30% from Friday, and they're not happy.
We should know more details by this time Tuesday, but what are the biggest questions that remain about the deal?
I think the biggest question is, given that Europe consequently lowered its duty to 2.5%, in the past was more convenient to build a car in Europe and export to the US, given that the duty there was 2.5%, and the opposite way was 10%. Now, if you have a car that could be built in Europe or in America, maybe it is better to build in the US because the duty coming to Europe is just 2.5%. And that's basically a reversal of what it was before. The duty before was 10% to Europe and 2% to the US, and now we reversed the flow.
Perfect. Luca, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
Coming up, General Motors says it's full speed ahead for electrification despite sluggish demand and policy changes. We'll hear from GM's Kurt Kelty next on Daily Drive.
Daily Drive listeners like you have access to the lowest price for Automotive News Congress 2025 on September 11th.
The event is where the industry's biggest players tackle its toughest challenges. Congress attendees don't just follow the industry, they lead it.
This year's featured speakers include Hyundai Motor Group Executive Chair Yusin Chung and General Motors CEO Mary Barra.
We are investing in America. We're creating jobs. That's creating IP in this country. And I think, the United States needs to lead in key technologies.
Join us to gain the insights and connections needed to steer your business through massive change.
To get the lowest price for the event, go to autonews.com/events, select Auto News Congress, and type in the discount code Daily Drive, one word, all caps. We'll see you in September in Detroit.
While you provide top-notch support to your team and customers every day, is anyone taking the time to ensure your sensitive data remains secure? Just one click on a malicious link can place your entire dealership in danger. In fact, the average cost of a data breach surpassed $4 million last year. Stay one step ahead by understanding the threats and minimizing your risk. Proton Dealership IT works around the clock to provide you with support 24/7, 365. Operating out of a cutting-edge security operations center located in the USA, Proton continuously monitors, detects, and responds to your potential network issues or cyber threats. You've got a lot on your plate. Keep your focus on where it matters most, your customers. We'll handle the cyber support. Learn more about our comprehensive services at protontex.com. That's PROTONTECHS.com.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. The environment is tough for the EV transition now than it's been in many years. But General Motors says the electrification age is inevitable. Kurt Kelty is GM's Vice President of Battery Propulsion and Sustainability. He recently spoke with our own Pete Bigelow on Shift, a podcast about mobility. Here's a piece of their conversation.
Obviously, all the activity, especially in recent weeks, kind of juxtaposes against the federal policy changes, which seem to suggest there's going to be a slowdown in EV growth. So what is it exactly that GM sees on the horizon that portends all this battery activity?
Well, overall, there's just an understanding that the future is all about EVs, and Mary laid out a vision back in 2017, which is a zero emission vision for the company, and that keeps guiding us. Getting profitable EVs is the North Star that guides this company. Even today, that is the big driver. Is we've got to keep going. The timing on it, when it's going to happen, that's still fuzzy, and it got a little fuzzier, not a little fuzzier, a little harder to achieve over the last few weeks in the short term. But long run, we all know where we're going. It's the future is an EV future.
Does navigating the short-term disruptions that we may see, does that involve the use of like non-automotive applications for batteries, like energy storage, for a prime and obvious example?
Well, whether we have, the EV market is continuing to grow. Let's just be clear about that. It's just growing at a slower rate than I think everybody expected. Even if the market were growing a lot faster than it currently is, we would still go after this market. It's a tremendous opportunity for us, this energy storage market. It's an opportunity for us initially to take batteries that are being essentially would be recycled, but instead we're giving them a second life. And then we're also making new batteries that can go into this. And the market's just super attractive to us for one reason. When it's a multi-billion-dollar a year market, and we're going to get there in a couple of years with that. And then the second thing is that it enables us to leverage the investments we've made in battery cells, and we can sell these into another market. Third thing is it's the right thing to do for our country in terms of getting us more batteries to solve for the rapid increase in AI and the data centers that are being deployed around the country, and also as backup for utilities. There's just all sorts of reasons to put batteries on the grid that enable us to get better economic security, better national security. So there's a lot of reasons for it with it for GM and for the country.
And do you see this work with like large scale energy storage, like the new work you're doing with Redwood Materials, or is it small scale storage, like some of the products that GM Energy makes? Is it both of the above, et cetera?
So what we announced last week with Redwood was specifically ESS. It's and we deployed it in this project called the Crusoe project, where we've got 12 megawatts that are able to be supplied, and we've got 63 megawatt hours in this particular application. This is a large scale application. It's a data center. Now, what we're going to be doing going forward is more and more of those really large scale approaches. So you get 100 megawatt hours, even gigawatt hour projects. That's the intention of getting into the ESS business.
Gotcha. I got to see Redwood's microgrid that you just referenced a few weeks ago out in Sparks, and it was fascinating to see it kind of laid out in the, on the desert floor essentially, and powering the data center, as you said, and that's what we're going to see more of.
Oh, it really is impressive what they've done. And by working together, they're taking our secondhand batteries that would normally be recycled, and we're getting a second use out of them. It's fabulous. And after that, they get recycled. And after that, guess what? They come back into our batteries. They come back into cathode material and back into batteries and back into a new Lyric or a new Hummer.
And you said there's new batteries that are now going into ESS as well. Is that a particular chemistry that's well suited for your work in supplying those new batteries?
So we're able to supply right now vehicle batteries that would normally go into vehicles. We can supply those immediately for ESS applications. And then we're also developing new battery chemistries and form factors that would be specific for the ESS market. And we'll be introducing those over the next few years. That will be that, and as I say, that'll be tailor-made for the ESS market.
Gotcha. Okay. Kurt, elaborate on that just a little bit. What is the ESS market? Is it data centers? Is it more than just data centers? And how much does the demand grow that you can kind of forecast out into the future?
Yeah, so data centers are the biggest growth area, but really the biggest thing that we've got is the growth in electricity consumption in the US is significant year after year. And that growth is generally coming from renewable energy. I mean, if you want to deploy electricity quickly, a source of electricity, it's wind and solar. Those are the ones that can go quickly. You can do natural gas. It just takes longer for that, and it's not as clean. But if you get wind and solar, the challenge of both of them is that they are not reliable. You cannot count on them at a specific time, a specific date, that they're going to provide that electricity. So you combine that with a battery, and that's where the magic happens. When you combine renewable energy with batteries, that's where you get low emission, low cost electricity it's ready on demand.
Okay. So theoretically, though, like the energy source could be wind, solar. You're agnostic to whatever it really is, other than there's the environmental benefits that clearly come with renewables.
Totally agnostic. And the other way you can look at it is, in California, last year, I think there was 3 terawatts of electricity that was essentially dumped, that we just didn't have use for. And so it can be whatever the source is of electricity. We just need we need a storage mechanism to store it and to use it at the appropriate time. So it's all sorts. The applications for batteries in large scale facilities is tremendous. There's all these different types of applications. Well, yeah, I can go on and on about. But actually, Cal is the better one that you interviewed 2 weeks ago.
I'm curious, maybe with Cal or I know you've worked with JB Straubel in the past at Tesla. You two go back a ways. Have you worked with Cal as well before? And is that long-term relationship what brought GM into the fold here on energy storage with Redwood?
Well, I mean, yes, I worked for JB for all 11 years at Tesla. Worked with Cal as well. Worked with Colin, the CTO there. So I've worked with them, and it certainly makes things easier. We know how the other one thinks. We know that we can rely on the other ones. When JB makes a commitment, that's a commitment that we can honor. And I hope he feels the same way. So it definitely makes business easier between the two companies. But fundamentally, it's the business strategy. It's Redwood is using these secondhand batteries, and they're looking for firsthand batteries as well to supplement them with. And it's a market that we're going after. You wouldn't have to be a good friend to go after this business.
It definitely seems very complimentary on paper, regardless of
Yes.
previous working relationships or not.
That's right.
Another big GM announcement, I think earlier this month as well, was that Ultium Cells, which is the joint venture with LG, will produce lithium iron phosphate batteries by late 2027. What's the significance of producing LFP batteries in the United States and General Motors doing this at this particular time?
So LFP is really a good chemistry for the affordable vehicle with a small battery pack that doesn't need a whole lot of kilowatt hours in there. That's where the sweet spot is. And the LFP in the US right now is all coming from China. So this is an opportunity where we can localize LFP and get these into our vehicles as quickly as we can.
So it's part of this reshore, reindustrialize, increase domestic activity, cut our reliance on China all at the same time.
So if I actually back up just a minute, what we're doing on our battery team is there's really three pillars to it. It's how do we reduce costs? How do we improve performance? And when I say improve performance, that's the range, it's fast charge performance while keeping safety really at the heart of all of it. And then the third thing is localizing the supply chain. Those are the three pillars that we're really focusing on. And localizing the supply chain is really critical for us because we all saw what happened with supply chain challenges a few years ago with semiconductors and how hard that is, the challenges of COVID. So to bring the supply chain closer to us has all sorts of economic benefits. So we're working with our tier ones, our tier twos, our tier threes, to bring them as much as possible local. We're investing in the supply chain. With Lithium Americas, is that we've made investments of several $100 million. We've done this with graphite. We've done it with manganese, Element 25, the manganese company. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're bringing the suppliers with us on this journey to try and bring the whole ecosystem here of battery development and then battery manufacturing.
Kurt Kelty is GM's Vice President of Battery, Propulsion, and Sustainability. You can hear his full conversation with our own Pete Bigelow on Shift, a podcast about mobility that's available now wherever you get your podcasts. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Mary Corey for her reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on electrification, tariffs, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a look at why stop-start technology is under fire from regulators and consumers alike.
This technology, even aside from the elimination of the CAFE penalties, has been in the administration's sights as something worth eliminating and worth targeting.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.